So Recreation, and it's coming to cinemas nationwide. Is it October 3rd?
October 3rd, yes.
Yeah. So people have to watch it really to get it, but I've had a bit of a preview before we're chatting. I absolutely loved it. Did the concept of doing it come up because of the frustrations maybe you found making the documentary?
Yeah. I mean, the idea of doing it came up because when I made the documentary, I made it with Sky, and they were very conservative and very, you can't put this in, you can't put that in. And there was so much left unsaid, So I was actually working on another documentary, kind of an arty one, with Vicky Cripes. And myself and Dave started thinking, this is not going to work. And it was a bit out there. And then the people in Luxembourg were building sets and they went over budget. And we just decided at the last minute, look, we can't afford all this. Just give us one room and a jury room. And I just thought a redo of 12 Angry Men, kind of homage, would be interesting,
And it was because, of course, for those who are going to go and see it, this is set in a jury room and Ian Bailey is on trial for murder. And it starts with pretty much everyone except one interesting character, French girl, or she's a... Yeah, the mixture of the French and the Irish as well is because of the two countries that are significant in Ian Bailey's story. But just one has their doubts. And then you start the conversations and digging into the weeds of it. And you're able to then, examine a lot of really interesting issues that came up in the real world in the Ian Bailey case. And what is this called, by the way? Is it fraction? Is that a word used in cinema?
I don't know. I mean, I think the film is quite individual. A lot of the reviews in America said that, you want to believe you're creating something new every time, that they hadn't seen anything like it. And I think between the archival stuff, the docudrama and the real stuff. So for instance, the pathologists he's a real pathologist that we interviewed for the doc part and put in. So I don't really know, Jim, do you?
No, I mean...
It's a lot of what you're discussing in this fictionalized jury room is the real issues in the case. Yeah. The failures of the first police investigation, the delay when Sophie Toscan du Plantier was lying dead. The delay was because of Christmas, because the then pathologist couldn't make it down for a few days and her body was left exposed, which was the first big problem because we lost a lot of forensics.
Because the body was exposed. Well, there's two sides to that. I think probably the French were insisting that the main man go down, and Harbison wasn't allowing a woman pathologist to go, from Cork. So there's two sides. Like on the one side, it's kind of incompetence, and on the other side, they're the most competent police force in Europe. So it plays both ways, I think incompetence is a good out, if you want to spin a narrative,
And again, what happens in this fictionalized jury room, most of it really is kind of the problems in the case that you're discussing. And different members of the jury bring up different aspects that bother them. You're right down in the weeds of the story, and because you made the documentary, you know it so well at this stage. Some of it I'm trying to remember. I did cover the story at the time on and off a number of times, but in particular the conversation around the black coat.
Yeah. Well, the black coat was the first thing that, the first kind of piece of visual evidence. And I'm kind of obsessed with, the idea of all this ChatGPT and AI, which is all basically fed in information from newspapers and books. It's all printed information. And there's very little visual in it. And that happened with the Gutenberg press. Suddenly the Bible was everywhere, the biggest seller. So you have all this information that's written down. And when statements are made, people tend to believe black marks on white paper. They just tend to go, oh, yeah, it's statement. But one of the first statements was from the woman who took a video of Bailey. And she said at the end of the video, he took his hand out of his pocket and she could see the scratches.
Was this at the Christmas Day swim?
Yeah, at the Christmas Day swim, where he's wearing the black coat.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at it and I went, but he's waving his hand around. And he doesn't look like he's a killer. And he doesn't look like he's too worried.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it became that he had bleached the coat the night before and then he'd burned it on Stevens's day. And lately the son, Sophie's son, was on the late saying that he had burned it on Christmas Day. So it's like the coat moved, but the actual truth was that the police took it when they arrested him. So, and they tested it.
Months and months after she died.
In February.
Yeah.
So about 6 weeks later.
6 weeks later, okay. Mm-hmm. So that aspect of the coat and the jury in recreation will discuss the coat, and you've a particular fascination with the coat. And John Connors, the actor, ends up in the coat at one point.
Does,
yeah. And we're trying not to give away exactly what happens in the movie, but I suppose to go back to Ian Bailey himself, because David, you said he died during the making of the movie.
Yeah, that's right.
If he was alive, was there anything different you would have been doing in the movie?
I don't really know the answer to that question. I mean, our thing was when we were making the original project, as Jim said, is we wanted to try and get to the truth.
Yeah.
And we felt like we discovered things that were new information. And as Jim said, there was things he wanted to express during the Sky one that he couldn't. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of our goal. And maybe to just cause enough trouble that people would start looking at something other than the fact that Ian Bailey is the only person in the frame. Mm-hmm. Because the investigation was incredibly flawed. And so that was really the goal. And I think then when it turned into the dramatic version of it, that was still the goal. I mean, we wrote it in like 2 weeks in a hotel. So it was very, very quick.
But you were right on top of the story at that
Yes,
stage.
we knew it.
All over it.
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't know if we'd have done something different.
You've done all your research as such.
I don't know. Before he died, we were in Portugal or something or we were somewhere. He called and you missed the call and called him back, and then he died like a couple of days later. Do you think we'd have done something different, Jim?
I don't think so, no. I mean, I went down to see him at the Christmas,
Did he know you were making this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And did he want any involvement, or was he interested in
It's Ian. What do you think?
Did he want to play a role in it?
No. He didn't know.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Well, he always used to think that I was the captain of his ship. And I forget what Donald McIntyre was. He was like...
Robin.
Yeah, he was like, I don't know. But, he had this kind of... He was the kind of Churchillian character of the whole investigation. Mm-hmm. And, he was an odd character, to say the least, He was like, he loved being in the limelight, as we all know. But it was more like he didn't exist unless he was in the limelight.
Uh-huh. And did you find warmth for him? Did you find him... I've always found him to be, as you say, he is an odd character. It's hard to make a connection with him or something.
Yeah.
Other than if you're talking about him.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very difficult to make a connection with him if you're not talking about him.
Mm. Was he interested in you as a person? Did you find him interested in other people and what made them tick?
Not really, now that you ask me. I don't think so. He was a narcissist. He was obsessed with himself, But, I began to look upon him, I wouldn't say this if he was alive, but I began to look upon him as a disabled person, almost like a child, that, he was Lula,
Yeah.
His mind wasn't quite correct,
Well, he was drinking a lot, I suppose, at the end, and had possibly some brain injury from that nearly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the stress that, I think that part of the reason you get all these Irish confessions, is because we're injected with "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." Mm. And Bailey wasn't. He was a prod, and he didn't. he didn't do confession.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they met somebody who was unique and odd when they took him in.
Yeah.
Like he didn't break at all in those long interviews.
Yeah.
And so I think they thought genuinely they would get him to break or Jules, you know. And he didn't, God bless him. You know, because like, what do you want? You know, you want another false confession.
Did you, I'm sure millions of people have asked you, did you think he did it, right? People have always asked me that, and I sort of swing. But the fact of the matter is, there is no evidence there that he did it. There's a circumstantial case, perhaps, that will suggest that, but there's no big evidence. We hear over the last few weeks that there's new DNA possibly being extracted from the rock.
Well, it was DNA 13 years ago on Sophie's boot, unknown male DNA, that hasn't been tested. I don't know why that is. The French found that out 13 years ago. I assume because it isn't Ian Bailey's DNA.
Is this when she was exhumed in France?
Yeah.
They tested it. It's actually on her boot. So it was the clothes. The French come over and did the testing.
Okay.
And unknown male DNA was found on Sophie.
Okay.
And Barry Roche admitted that it was Bailey who brought this to light in the Irish press.
He wrote the story.
Yeah, he informed the press about it. So, like, my kind of thing is like, okay, so you have unknown male DNA. Is the majority of that DNA English, Irish, French, or from the Balkans?
Because you can do those tests now, of course.
You can do them. And so that could have given people an indication. But they don't do that. You know, they just keep everything within their remit. But all the stuff that's coming out now is coming out like, I don't know who's leaking it. But there's a lot of journalists get information. I don't know where they get it. And they're the same couple of journalists all the time. And one of them wrote a book called The Final Solution or something. And
The Final Verdict, Jim.
The Final Verdict.
Who wrote that?
Okay. Senna Maloney wrote a book called
The Final Solution's a different book.
Thank you. But, you know, in it he says all that. Like, one of the things he's saying was that this, first of all, he's going against Robert Sheehan. Like, Robert Sheehan didn't write his thing to mess up the guards or do it. And he was somebody in the DPP who believed what he wrote. He had the head of the DPP confirm it and 2 senior counsels. And they go on like he's the one man standing in the way.
And what was his role? What did he do again?
He was the man in the DPP who wrote the report.
Yeah.
And he came under huge pressure.
Which essentially said there wasn't enough evidence to charge Ian Bailey.
He said, like, Marie Farrell's evidence was questionable. Yeah. And it turned out 4 or 5 years later. Like, I would say in normal circumstances, if the chief witness says you were in a black coat at the scene of the crime and you were following her a few days earlier, and if they then say, no, the police made me say that, I don't think there's any case against you.
And let's just pull all those threads together there for a second, just to explain that to people watching and listening. So Marie Farrell is a local from Schull, and she initially claims that she saw Sophie in the village one day, I think, and there was a man in a black coat watching her. But the original statement stated that man was 5'10".
5'7".
5'7".
And they said, let's round it up to 5'8". She said, my husband's 5'7". Let's round it up to 5'8".
Okay.
So,
and at the point in time she gives this statement, she's no reason to give it other than, you know, the same way anybody would in a murder inquiry.
Yeah.
So then we go onwards, and Marie Farrell finds herself in a compromised...
But just go back on that now. Can I take you back on that?
Yeah.
So the distance from the shop to the butcher's where he's standing outside is only about 20 meters max. It's very unusual to see somebody following somebody. A normal person surreptitiously following somebody would be in the butcher shop, hidden by the glass. So it wasn't only Marie Farrell who saw him, it was Dan Griffin, an older guy. Dan Griffin ran the pub. That Marie Farrell's shop was a pub initially. And he said more or less the same thing, a fellow with a beret. And then all that got changed later. But both of them saw him following her up a lonely country road. Now, you're a woman of 39 and attractive, and there's a guy following you up a road. You know he's following you. I mean, it was more likely to me, and this without any knowledge of the truth, that he was with her.
Well, I mean, it would be very peculiar for somebody, a killer, to openly follow around a would-be victim.
Yeah.
It's like something from an old film.
Yeah.
Really. I know we're back in... We didn't have CCTV everywhere at the time, and we probably didn't have GPS on phones or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, even though it is only within, that short space of time, but things have changed a lot. But it'd be highly unusual for a would-be killer to be up close and that personal to a victim. That they're like stalking them as if, but in open view.
Yeah, it's
and
weird.
yet 2 people did see this individual, 2 independent people. Now, as the story goes on, Marie Farrell is basically she kind of ends up working for the cops for a while.
So Marie, just to get in, Marie makes an anonymous call to say that she's seen somebody the night of Sophie's murder near the house. The police recognize her voice. They give her a video from the Christmas swim and ask if she recognizes anybody. She says she does not. Then she's brought to a policeman's home, shown the video, and according to Marie, which I happen to believe, pressured into saying that it was Ian Bailey. A man who's 6'4", English, very recognizable in this small, small town. And at the same time, Dan Griffin says it's Ian Bailey as well. So that was where the DPP said, okay, he comes from 5'8", 5'7" to 6'4", and Ian Bailey.
Yeah.
How can we believe these 2 things?
Right. And that is going to be, the DPP decides that's going to be a major problem going forward if they go into a court of law, because it'll be challenged and the case could collapse on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Marie Farrell has a very significant role in all this. So she not only sees a man following Sophie, but she sees Ian Bailey as well.
Well, initially she said it wasn't Ian Bailey. Initially, she leaves an anonymous call saying she's seen somebody that night.
This was somebody at the river.
Yes. And then afterwards, when the police kind of get with her, according to Marie, they get her to say that it was Ian, because that's who they liked at the time. And they had the video beforehand to give to her, to show to her, because they believed it was Ian Bailey.
Now, she ends up being a very compromised witness, if ever there was one.
Yeah.
Because she... Remind me, with that libel trial, did she give evidence on behalf of the police in the libel trial?
Yeah.
And then it subsequently emerged that she had been sort of given a phone and some other inducements, basically, to give this evidence against him and to frame him. So you're seeing a picture where he is being framed. He may be guilty, but he's still being framed.
Yeah.
And that can be a mindset, I think, in police sometimes, that they always say, good police officers always say to you have to keep an open mind no matter what is glaring you in the face, because but I get the impression from you both
when she goes to that trial, I said to the senior who questioned her for 5 days that he did an amazing job in proving that this was the later trial. A self-confessed perjurer was in fact the liar. So the later trial, they focused on her and said, do you believe her or the police? Now, that's not a question. Like, do you believe this person who admitted they lied or the police? And on that basis, the judge found against Bailey and eliminated all the other evidence. Look, it may be that the state at certain points has to protect itself, that there comes a moment where, you just have to cut everything loose and defend the status quo, because the alternative is a nightmare, So, like, I did the Guildford 4, okay? And a lot of people commend me for, oh, Jim, you did the Irishman wrongly accused in England. So this is the Englishman, in my mind, wrongly accused in Ireland. Like, I could be wrong, but that's the way I see it. But in the Guildford 4, I believe this, that yes, the authorities knew the Guildford 4 were not guilty, but it was much bigger deterrent to have non-guilty people in prison than guilty people. Because having a guilty person in is of no importance. But if everybody believes they can be put in jail, if everybody is afraid to go to America, if you create situations that are quasi-fascist, and everybody's just afraid to move. Now, in this case here, it's the DPP who are the fuse box against the authority of the police, which is very powerful and rightly so. And I'm not against the heavy gang. Like, everybody goes, oh, the heavy gang. But what could they do at the time? Like, they had an out-of-control situation, so they were trying to control it. But when it then fed into normal people and not people engaged in political activity, that becomes like, what are you doing here? It's getting out of control. So it's about establishing a civil society. That's what I'm trying to point to. I'm not trying to go, Ian Bailey is innocent every day of the week. I'm just saying, you have somebody that's their job. And now you have the entire media going against this person. Like, no.
And I think Senna Maloney was one of the 3 journalists that interviewed him the first time, that he sort of ultimately, which was difficult to understand a journalist actually doing it, he created a situation where the press could name him.
Yeah, I didn't know that, yeah.
Because you'd never have been able to name him as a suspect until he named himself as a suspect.
Yeah, okay.
It was quite a famous interview, actually, because from then on, Ian Bailey was named.
Okay.
But he would have understood.
The way the monk is the monk, because
he would have understood the libel laws here.
Yeah.
Like, he couldn't have just without any,
is that
charges
where
being
the
levelled.
self-confessed chief suspect comes from?
That's where it comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
because he sat down and did an interview with 3 journalists at some point, and he told them that he was the chief suspect in it. He was right, but him telling them aloud.
Yeah, but he wasn't the self-confessed chief suspect. Self-confessed was like intimated that he was guilty.
You could see it that way, or you could say that he confessed that he was the chief suspect to these journalists when he was doing the interview.
Yeah. But it's a confession.
The confession was being the chief suspect as opposed to a confession.
Yeah.
Well, as Frank Buttimer has pointed out a ton of times, Ian had been a crime reporter, gave his DNA freely.
Yeah.
They took his stuff, and Ian, I think, wanted to feel like he was a somebody and thought this was his opportunity, thought the DNA would clear his name, and strutted, essentially.
What are we going to do if the DNA says it was Ian Bailey?
I was just about to ask you that. What are you going to do?
Well, well, here's the thing. How on earth is it Ian Bailey's DNA? Where was Ian Bailey's clothes stored? Were they stored next to Sophie Toscan du Plantier's? Who examined the DNA? Was it the same person who examined both? Did they use gloves? If it turns out to be Ian Bailey at this point in time, but
well, actually, funny enough, Forensic Science Ireland, which has been in existence since back then, they have convicted in one of the coldest cases in Ireland in recent times. A woman called Nora Sheehan was murdered in Cork, and her killer, Noel Long, was convicted. And what actually came from that case was the fact that back then, forensics were handled so carefully. It was extraordinary. There was no cross-contamination. This was really aggressively defended during that case. And I interviewed some of the people involved in actually the testing, and they were quite proud that it had stood the test of time.
Yeah, and I think the policeman who did that did a good job, But in this case, you're expected to believe, and I'm not, if it's whatever the DNA proves, it proves. But, the same people who lost the gate kept the rock. So where's the safe custody? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a gate full of blood gone missing, and there's a rock. Now, the only thing I would say in relation to DNA
the gate probably got in the way eventually in the storage room. They had to kind of decide what to keep and what to lose.
Yeah. Well, I would say you could carbon date a sample, What date was that blood on the rock, But what do you think? Do you think they're going to say it's Ian Bailey?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's blood on the rock. The blood has to be Sophie's.
Yeah.
Unless he's cut as well.
No, but whoever carried the rock,
carried it, there'd be DNA.
So we hired an FBI guy from the behavioural science unit, and actually he made this point to us 2 years ago, that the weight of that rock, if somebody picked it up and it was wet, it should have skin cells in it.
And you were physical with it.
Obviously it's very old. It wasn't stored in cold, which it's supposed to be. But it's possible that there is contact DNA or touch DNA on there.
I suppose the question becomes, if they had unknown male DNA in 2008.
11.
No, it was in 8 and then 11.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why didn't they test it? And now they're testing it to make sure it's not police.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so why are they having to eliminate the 2008 DNA? Is that to say that it's different to what they've now found? So they can't have a contradiction.
Mm.
So they have to find somebody who matches the 2008, or else there's two DNAs.
Mm. Well, I mean, I'd say they're only doing it now because there's enough development to extract. There has been huge amount of developments in that whole field over the past, 10, even 2 years.
Yeah.
There's
But you'd have to believe
developments.
that there's no way anybody could plant DNA now. You'd have to believe that. That'd be a big reach, wouldn't it?
It certainly would. It certainly would. So we've had 2 documentaries about this case. We have the movie, Recreation, and there's been, 2 or 3 books on the Sophie Toscan du Plantier story. I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but what are the kind of strands of this story that you think keep us fascinated?
Well, I think it's in Ireland that keeps us fascinated, really, because it's like somebody died in our midst and we never found out who did it. And like in the movie, I'm trying to say that it goes back to all our prejudices. The story is about Ireland. It's about where we are, as a people and police force. And it's so mysterious because it's like the most brutal murder with no DNA, with no evidence, and somebody living up the road 30 yards away who doesn't hear anything. And the person who discovers the body is allowed to drive into the town and get our car repaired. Like, that's crazy, And Alfie, goes down then and sees the body.
Alfie, what's his name? Alfie Lyons. And he's a neighbour of Sophie Toscan.
He's the husband of Shirley Foster, who discovered the body.
And their house is, and you've obviously been to the scene loads and loads of times, and you, David, the house is close enough. I mean, it's the 3 houses actually on that little patch are in the middle of nowhere, and yet they are neighbourly enough that you could run from door to door. It always...
Well, one of them, the nearest one is like the house across the road in a suburban estate.
Yeah.
And the other house is the one at the end of the road. So that one's like 150 yards away and the other's 50 yards less.
And one of the 3 houses that night wasn't occupied. It was a holiday home maybe, or somebody wasn't there. But the neighbours were in the other house. And again, the jury in the movie do wonder and ponder about why Sophie didn't run there for help and why those neighbours didn't hear anything. And also, you look at how she was found, which was in a pair of boots, laced up, but with no overcoat on a freezing winter's night. You see, there's all these there's mystery stacked upon mystery, I think, in this case. And you also have the fact that, we do seem to have more empathy for a young, attractive female victim of crime than we will for a male.
Yeah. Well, that's understandable. I think really, a lot of the Irish people are empathizing with the French family who don't have any resolution. But that goes back to, like, it's always the victim's family who you'll identify with. That's natural. It's very hard to identify with the accused.
And also, there is a lot made of the fact that Ian Bailey is an Englishman. In particular, the character of John Connors finds that particularly offensive. In actual fact, that's almost enough for him to convict him, isn't it? And he's brilliantly plays that role. But I think it's been described in the documentary originally that it's this blot on that landscape, isn't it? Because Schull is a place where people come from all over the world. There's an envy of those who live in it and live that lifestyle in it. And the idea of something so horrible happening there, it's not been rubbed away or erased. It's still there because the fact that it hasn't been solved.
Yeah, and I think locals don't, they don't want to discuss it. They don't really like you coming down a lot of times. I think you have Sophie, and we spent a lot of time talking about Ian, right? Which rightly rubs the family up the wrong way. But why wasn't Ian convicted? Because the DPP said there was not enough evidence and that some of the evidence smelt of corruption. So they didn't convict him. And 28 years later, nobody's been brought to call for what happened to Sophie. So if Ian Bailey did do it, right, then who's responsible for Ian Bailey not being convicted? You've met him. Was he a genius? Was he some criminal mastermind? He wasn't. He was a drunk and he was a narcissist. So why wasn't he convicted? So who's to fault for that? Let's say it is Ian. Whose fault is that? Is it ours because we're still trying to uncover the truth? Do you know what I mean? It just, I think that's a big part of it. People see there's an injustice here and nobody's been called. And they want somebody to be called to account for what happened to her because it was a brutal way to end your life. And as you said, you've been out there. Imagine that in a cold night, you know?
David, just you mentioned to me when you came in, there's a few little bits that you have kind of uncovered. And I presume you're still sort of working away on this case. People are still coming to you. And
well, and honestly, we're waiting on the results of the cold case review. You know, as Jim pointed out earlier on, you know, John O'Driscoll started that review the day he retired because he was aware it was going to be unpopular. And, you know, we'd been in communication with him about doing an interview because we'd originally just been doing a doc, myself and Jim. And, you know, partly because of that new evidence that was uncovered, it started. So we just really want an answer, you know, and I'm hoping the only real answer is going to come from the police, not going to come from us. You know what I mean? We can only make noise.
Yeah,
and,
we don't have access to the files, to the documents.
No. But you've had access to quite a lot of stuff.
You
know, you have. And there is a lot of stuff really out there in the public arena, especially the earlier stuff and all the rest of it. And I have no doubt that people come to you with harebrained
I get
ideas.
crazy ideas.
Do you get a few of them?
Yeah.
As well as useful information.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, you were actually, sorry, we should point out that you star in this film as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, I'm playing.
Did you convince him to do that, David?
E-star.
Because what happened was
we needed him to be there.
Right.
It was just that I knew probably the most of anybody in the room, so I could guide it, you know, internally. And it was a way for me to, like, I had to be forgetting everything. I was often be going to say something and I go, oh, no, that was the French trial. I can't say, you know, so I having to shift all the time because I wasn't, you know, I had too much information, you know. But I was always trying to look for what I was going to say, which is a very interesting way to act.
Wait, did you do some of it off cuff?
No, it was
all of it.
Well, we had a script that we wrote in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
but
because
there's an awful lot of improvisation in the film from everybody.
Yeah, I can see a bit of it sometimes.
Oh, a lot.
Improvisation.
I'd say it's 80%.
Really?
We only had an outline of story.
Okay. And how long did it take to film?
We had 7 days in Luxembourg in the jury room and then another 5 here. For the stuff that's outside. And there's actually quite a bit of green screen. You won't notice it because it's so well done to insert into the jury room. We had 11 days.
Right.
Yeah.
12 days. 12 days, Shay, wasn't it? 12, 5
maybe,
here.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, 12.
So even the kind of the getting up and the walking around and all that was just really, you know, really?
Yeah. And we do long takes, 25-minute takes, and just let the cameras go. We'd had 2 cameras.
And let people talk. And did stuff come out of that you hadn't written?
Yeah.
Of course.
The most difficult thing was that, you know, the girl who erupts and says she was in Sarajevo in a bath and John Connors has his own story. And people found it hard to believe the backstories of the jury because they know the other story is real.
Yes.
So the minute they hear something they think is invented, they go, I wonder about that. But most of the backstories are true.
As well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the idea of mixing the French and the Irish in the jury.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realise that girl was supposed to be from Sarajevo. I thought they were supposed to be half French,
Well, we
half
have a
Irish.
European jury.
European jury, yeah. Oh, because the trial is happening, yes, of course. He was, of course, convicted in France and convicted of murder, which bore little, you know, didn't really do anything for him other than he could not travel to France or he would have been jailed.
Yeah.
The Irish government refused to extradite him.
Yeah.
The Irish courts refused to extradite him, which you kind of, at that point, felt, well, if we couldn't have a conviction here, we don't have a case to answer here, you know. But I'm sure that was a very worrying time for him. In actual fact, I think we were speaking to him around that time, and it was just, was he really going to be sold down the Swanee by the Irish system, you know, because he could have been, had they let him be extradited to France. What do you think he would have thought of it?
I don't know. He would always pick out little things that were wrong.
Was he?
I think he would have been happy with it, you know, I think, you know. I mean, it's about him.
It's about him all the way.
But I deliberately had him not speak because he spoke so much. So that was just a deliberate idea to go the other way, you know.
Yeah. Because he appears just basically in the court, and I think the
Colin Meaney is doing him, so he brings a bit of tension and
bit of moodiness
to it.
But we're told that in the courtroom that he has refused to give evidence, basically to defend himself.
Yeah,
he hasn't spoken.
Basically,
it'll be a bit difficult now, all right. But I think as well, you always have had a good sense of Sophie.
Yeah,
and I think she comes through. She's the victim in it, and at one point the jury are trying to consider what it was like that dark night, and that is quite a chilling scene. I think you can really imagine, and the footsteps and how she was in the house, even though we still do not know what actually happened.
Yeah.
And do you think we ever will?
I think we will. If this DNA comes up with something, I think we'll know. I kind of find it hard to believe that, you know, Jules, you know, after all these years, when they broke up and whatever, didn't come out and say, look, he killed her, he left the house, you know? Like, why wouldn't she say that? She didn't like him at the end. So I find it hard to believe it's him. But there you go, you know, we're going to find out. But it's weird to be leaking all this stuff in the press. Do you not think so? Like, just wait till you have a definite answer.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's really the nature of media and all the rest of it. And maybe the journalists know that the Bailey, the Sophie Toscan du Plantier case will always make a headline, will always make the pages or the digital headlines or whatever it is. So you have a tendency to keep going, you know, to keep checking in on cases like that.
It sells.
It sells, exactly, And that's, you know, and here we are.
But, you know, like I've been saying, and I don't think many people would have read these things, but, you know, the Netflix are, you know, the current American true crime is essentially built around the kind of Truman Capote revenge story. They got the electric chair and they deserved it. That's what makes an audience happy. Resolution. But I prefer Thomas de Quincey, who was the first to write on true crime. And he was defending this Irish guy who was brought to burial upside down, and they put a stake in his heart and buried him without a coffin because he was the monster of the Irish monster in England. And de Quincey was pointing out how brilliant a murderer he was. And he called it the art of murder. And he showed how this guy jumped from one house to the other, 30 foot away, went down, whatever, proving it was impossible. But the empathy in de Quincey is with the murderer, you know, with the person that everybody's happy to say, oh, he did it, you know. But if there's one person only who has objects, that's what, you know, democracy is. It's kind of, you know, you have to allow people to cast out, you know, otherwise, what's the point?
So, did you go to Ian Bailey's funeral?
There was no funeral in essence. And I tell you what.
There was a gathering, was there?
No. Oh, I went to the ashes being scattered.
The ashes, rather, yeah.
Yeah. His sister decided there'd be no funeral. And I went to the ashes being scattered with Frank Buttimer and all the legal team and his sister and her family. And Jules said they scattered them in the wrong place, but I don't know if that mattered. But like, you know, it's a strange story where there's a little town caught in the middle of this huge story, you know, and it gives a kind of insight into the town and how people can be galvanized into a hysteria. And then everything settles down and everybody's sorry they made a statement.
And I think sort of, you know, there's lots of people, if you look online, there's two camps. There's Ian did it, Ian was innocent, you know. And you'll see people online, you know, tearing into us about what we're saying. As I mentioned to you before, you know, we have audio recordings we brought today. I don't know if you want to hear them or not, but it's audio recordings of the police discussing destroying evidence, falsifying evidence, shattering the idea that Ian had inside knowledge, and then pretending other suspects are out of the country. That's just for starters. There's hundreds of these recordings, and a lot of them are really damning against the police investigation. And so from our point of view, when you look at that, people go on about how untrustworthy Murray Farrell is. Well, how trustworthy is the investigation if behind closed doors they're saying there's no case? I'm trying to make a jumper and I've got threads. You know, there's a problem with the Silent Hill Fada Bridge. You know, we know there's an issue. We know that Robert Sheehan is picking up on the height differences between the first statement and the second, and you can see where he's coming from. If the police are saying this behind closed doors, how can we believe, and bear in mind, we don't have the audio recordings of around the time that Ian became a suspect. We only have 4 or 5 months later because those recordings were allegedly destroyed in a flood. So how can you believe anything from the investigation? You know, and I'm sure there was good policemen doing good work. I'm positive of it. But there was certain policemen down there who wanted Ian no matter what it was. And that's what actually prevented Ian from being prosecuted in the end.
For sure. I mean, that's it in a nutshell, really, isn't it? They focused on him and they were going to make the evidence fit.
Yeah, I talked to a journalist who put an article out saying, you know, oh, the police are jubilant and, you know, it's Bailey and what. And basically, he's saying that because Bailey was the only blood they took, the only blood that can match is Bailey's. Like, that's crazy.
Well, that's not true. They took hair DNA. I talked to a forensic person this morning and they told me the profile from the hair can match the blood.
Right. I doubt if the DNA will match anybody. That'd be my instinct. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, you'd be all over the cinema at that stage.
Yeah.
The nationwide release date, it's in Omniplex cinemas, across Ireland and the UK from the 3rd of October. Recreation, the new film from Jim Sheridan and David Merriman. Loved it.
Cheers. Thanks, Nicola. Thanks for having us.
I'm Nicola Tallant and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.